Week 5 is in the books. We're halfway through the season, and your Birmingham Stallions are still undefeated. We're going to break down this past weekend's game against the Houston Roughnecks, talk about what the Stallions got right, talk about maybe some ways they could improve moving forward, and talk about what they need to do to stay on this trajectory and look towards winning a third championship in 3 years. This is State of the Stallions. Thanks for tuning in.
Here we go. Hey, giddy up on three. 1, 2, 3. Giddy up.
You can feel the buzz when you're around this city. People have fallen in love with the Birmingham Stallions. Here we go. We're getting a little juice going.
USFL championship.
So if you watch this weekend's game, then you'll know that I'm correct when I say there's not a lot to talk about other than just to say, wow, what a performance by the Stallions. Final score 32-9, Stallions win. There was a lot of chatter this week about how Houston has been the Stallions' kryptonite over the last few years. Head to head going into this game, the teams were 2-2. Houston's won 2 games, the Stallions have won 2 games. And a lot of people had kind of put the Stallions on potential upset alert, given the fact that they were coming off a very tight win against a Defenders team that does not look to be as good as they were a year ago. However, all that being said, when it all came down to business and the chatter stopped, the smoke cleared, it was very obvious who was the better team on the field on Saturday night, and that was the Birmingham Stallions, who jumped out to a huge lead in the first half, 26-9, and were able to kick a couple field goals in the second half and bottle up the Houston offense to remain undefeated. And just want to give my couple quick takeaways from the game. The first one would have to be that Adrian Martinez is a playmaker. If you've listened to the show, you know that I've been high on Matt Corral. Certainly have not been low on Martinez. I really like what he can do, but I think having watched them both in college, I was a little bit higher on Corral, and I'm still high on Corral. And I know Coach Holtz is still high on Corral. But what Martinez is able to do with his legs is just, at least for the Stallions, I mean, honestly, it's unprecedented. And that's saying a lot when you look at the quarterbacks we've had, specifically Alex Magoo last year. I'm not saying, of course, that Martinez is better than Magoo, but what I am saying is what he's able to do with his legs. I think we've not had a quarterback quite like this. And again, Magoo was great with his legs. But the speed and the agility and the cuts and the vision that Martinez has as a runner is just incredible. And the guy set the record for the UFL so far in a single game for rush yards in a game. He had 3 carries of over 30 yards, and it's just so hard to stop. I mean, they were talking about it during the game, but, Houston was getting in man coverage with 2 high safeties, and the receivers would run their routes. And, we've got a good offensive line who does a great job blocking, and Martinez would find a crease, nobody open, and just take off. And I mean, you're not catching him. And so the only way you bring him down is he runs towards the sideline. You finally force him to go out of bounds. But by that time, he's 35 yards down the field. So he looked great again. I thought he also looked great throwing the ball again. I mean, I think that's always been the question is we knew he could make plays with his legs, but could he make plays with his arm? And I thought the 2 games that he started and played entirely, I've been really impressed with the way he's thrown the ball placement. He had a beautiful throw to Jay Sternberger for a touchdown, had another really beautiful throw to Deion Kane that should have been a touchdown that Deion was very close to pulling in. So can't really say enough good things about his performance, and certainly will be interesting to see what Skip does at the quarterback spot moving forward over the next couple of weeks. My second takeaway was the defense played true to form. And what I mean by that is both they played really well. That's certainly been true to form for them this year, and true to form in terms of how the Stallions defense has sort of developed kind of their style of play over the last few years. They didn't necessarily totally shut Houston down, especially in the passing game. They gave up more yards than I would maybe like. They gave up 271 yards through the air. Reed Sinnett, I thought, played really well. He had over 200 yards, over 70% completion percentage. He had 1 touchdown. I thought that they had a pretty good game plan in terms of he was getting the ball out really quick. They had a lot of RPOs, a lot of kind of quick game passing schemes, and that was helping him to kind of get into a rhythm and not get sacked, not sort of be flushed by the Stallions' pressure. And so, they moved the ball pretty well. But again, the Stallions defense and the way that they've done for the last few years, it was very much sort of a bend don't break kind of mentality where, they forced two interceptions, one of which was in the end zone. They were helped by the fact that the Stallions got out to an early lead and Houston was having to kind of try and play catch up. So there's a couple times they drove down the field, got into the red zone, and maybe could have kicked a field goal to come away with some points, but were sort of forced into trying to go for a touchdown. And the Stallions, again, sort of the bend but don't break thing didn't give when it really mattered the most. So they were 1 of 4 on red zone touchdown attempts. That only red zone touchdown came off basically just an absurd catch by Kiki Chisholm. I think if they replayed that 100 times, I think he'd drop it 99 out of 100. But he just had an insane one-handed grab that led to a touchdown, and that's just a guy making a play. I mean, you can't really fault the Stallions defense too much for that because it was great coverage. But other than that, they didn't give up any touchdowns, and the Houston, again, that's not to say Houston didn't move the ball because they were in the red zone 3 other times, but they didn't come away with any points in those instances. So. I think the defense played great, especially coming off of a kind of a rougher week against DC, where they didn't again necessarily didn't give up a ton of points, but like we talked about on the show last week, I felt like they got manhandled a little bit, kind of got outplayed in the trenches, and I thought they really showed up this week and again played true to form. And then my third takeaway was we've got to work on the conversion plays. And I mean, we are working on them. I'm sure I know Skip is probably drilling it in practice, but we've got to work on somehow figuring out how to convert them because we started off the year doing pretty well in conversion plays, but the last few weeks, I mean, it has just been brutal. I need to go back and do the stats and figure out exactly over the last couple of games what our conversion success rate is. But I know at least this game we converted one out of 4. And if you think about it, those other 3 conversion plays, I mean, at a minimum, that's 3 points we left on the table. At a maximum, that's 9. And it seems like we've been going for 2 mostly. I don't know if we need to switch it up and just start trying to go for 1, maybe just get a point, line up in the T formation, let Ricky Person get a yard or 2, and at least come away with an extra point. Or maybe we should start going for 3. I mean, shoot, we've got obviously great quarterbacks, great tight end and receivers. Like maybe if we lined up at the 10-yard line, gave ourselves a little bit more space to work with, it might open things up more. And yeah, maybe we don't convert as many, but we're not converting many as it is right now. So I'd rather have 1 conversion every 3 or 4 attempts for 3 points than 1 conversion every 3 or 4 or 5 attempts for 2 points or 1 point or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, this is a new thing for the Stallions. We didn't have to do this in years past. We just kicked extra point conversions. So this is something that we're adjusting to, that the XFL teams have a little bit more experience with than we do. So I know that it's kind of a new thing for everybody, but at least in the Stallions organization. So I know it's something that Skip's aware of. He's working on. He's been asked questions about it before, but I think it's just something that there's a few other nitpicky things I could talk about. Overall, I thought the Stallions obviously played incredibly. It was a great win. It was a blowout win. It's hard to sit here and sort of say, well, we could have done this better, we could have done that better, but you always obviously want to improve. And right now, I mean, the conversions didn't matter in this game, but you look at a game like we had against DC, a week ago, or you look at some of the games we might have down the road against some better teams than Houston, and those conversions could be the reason we win or lose a game. So I think that's something that right now we've got to get figured out. Let me cover quick my star players of the game. It was actually pretty difficult this week to pick star players because, one, so many of the guys played well. It wasn't like, well, these couple guys really stood out and these other guys had a mediocre game. I mean, almost everybody played really well. And if you look at the stats, like everybody's kind of similar. Like, look at the receivers. It's like everybody had 1 or 2 catches for a similar number of yards. The running backs had similar sort of stats. The defenders, it was like, a couple guys had a good number of tackles, but other than that, most of the guys were sort of around it. So it was a very, very much a collective team effort. And it was difficult to sort of pick out individuals and say, well, these individuals deserve recognition, when really is, I think, again, sort of the whole team does. But that being said, I'm still going to give out a couple stars here. And I'm, again, I've done this before, but I'm going to kind of cheat again because I just couldn't decide. So for my 1-star player, I'm actually going to give it to 2 guys. I'm going to give it to Ricky Person Jr. and Larry Roundtree III. I thought both of those guys played incredibly, stepping in for Stallions starting running back CJ Marable, who missed a game for basically the first time, I think, since the first game of 2022. He's been our starting running back now for 3 seasons and had to step out for some family related matters. And I didn't have any doubts that those guys would do a great job filling in for him, especially obviously Ricky. We've seen what he can do this year. But I was also really excited to see Roundtree and see what he could do, and he certainly did not disappoint. Had a fantastic, 30 or so yard rush where he made an incredible cut and just made a great play, and then found the end zone later. Ended up with 50 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And then Ricky looked awesome too. I mean, he's just such a physical runner, but also again demonstrated the speed that he has, his ability to get to the edge on one touchdown, scored another touchdown out of the T-bone. He didn't end up with a ton of yards. He had 32 total yards in the game, but he did have two touchdowns, found the end zone twice in the first half there, and just ran the ball really, really hard and physically against a great Houston front seven. I mean, watching him and Reuben Foster hit each other, I mean, that's just like that's two men. It's like when you see the videos online of like two bighorn sheep or two rams just like, going at each other 100 miles an hour, just sort of button heads. I mean, that's kind of what it looked like seeing a guy with Ricky Person's strength and physicality, and then a linebacker with Reuben Foster's, same thing, sort of hit each other. But I mean, Ricky was bouncing off guys and making guys miss and breaking tackles as he does. So, wanted to recognize just both of them and give them both a star for their performance this week, and for really, helping the offense run smoothly without CJ out there. And for my two-star player, I wanted to give this to a Thompson. Definitely not Mark Thompson because he didn't have a great game. But I wanted to give it to Jordan Thompson, defensive tackle for the Stallions. Didn't necessarily have crazy numbers or anything like that, but still did have two tackles, both solo tackles. He had a tackle for loss. He also had a sack, and was actually the only sack of the game. The Stallions coming into the DC game, week 4, there was a lot of talk about the defensive line and how many sacks they had. And they didn't get any against DC. And we only had one this week. And a lot of that was the game plan from Houston. Credit to them. But we still were able to get to the quarterback once. And Jordan Thompson got that sack, which was a big play for us. And then he also had a forced fumble. Speaking of Mark Thompson, forced a fumble on Mark Thompson late in the game there. And again, we've talked a lot about the D line on this episode. But I felt it was fitting to pick a D lineman because there, again, was a lot of chatter going to this game about Mark Thompson was back. He's potentially the best running back in this league. Last year, the first time they saw him in the season, he ran for 78 yards and I think 3 touchdowns. He was kind of getting his feet under him a week ago, and this was expected to be his first kind of really full game back. And he, I mean, was nowhere to be found. The Stallions totally shut him down. He had 4 carries for 11 yards. Houston, as a team, only had 36 rushing yards. And a huge part of that was Jordan Thompson, defensive tackle, stuffing the run in the middle, again, getting pressure on the quarterback, getting a sack, forcing a fumble. Certainly, he wasn't the only one. There's other guys in the front seven that also deserve to be recognized. But Jordan Thompson has been a key piece for us going on for his 3rd year now, played his way into a starting role, continues to impress, and just be a huge part of what we've been able to do on the defensive side of the ball, and especially again in terms of the front seven and defensive line. So, got to give him 2 stars for his performance this week. And then my 3-star player, I don't think this will come as a surprise, but I've got to give it to Adrian Martinez. I mean, the guy was 11 of 20, had 155 passing yards, 1 touchdown, again on a beautiful pass to Jay Sternberger. Very easily could have had 2 touchdowns through the air if Deion Kane had come up with a pass there in the second half. And then on the ground, we already kind of talked about it, but on the ground, set a record for the UFL for rush yards in a game thus far in the UFL's history. 9 carries, 138 yards. Again, 3 carries of 30 yards or more. Finished the game with 293 total yards, so just shy of 300 total yards. And again, that 1 touchdown. I think, in the 2 games he's played, granted, I don't know in terms of the competition he faced, if it was necessarily the strongest competition. I mean, Houston, and then, he played against Memphis a couple weeks ago. But so those aren't necessarily great teams. But to his credit, when he's been out there, the offense has just hummed. I mean, it's just looked smooth. He's bailed us out of a lot of situations with his legs. His legs have opened up things for the rest of the offense. He's thrown the ball really well and really accurately. And Joel Klatt, Brock Heward, they were talking about it on the broadcast. Like he really fits Skip's offense, very well. I think they might have even said perfectly. And that certainly appeared to be the case in his performances as the starting quarterback for us over the last couple of weeks. So got to give him three stars for his performance, and shout him out for the game that he had. So that's going to be it for this episode. Just wanted to hop on and do a quick recap of the game. Again, not a lot to talk about other than just to say giddy up because we certainly, I think, put Houston in their place this week, and be back on at the end of the week to talk about another USFL Conference showdown this next weekend against Memphis in Memphis, a team that's really been struggling recently, but a big conference game for us. We really need this one to kind of solidify our place in the playoffs and work towards getting that home playoff game for the USFL Conference Championship. And so a win would go a long way towards doing that this next weekend against Memphis. So make sure you tune in at the end of the week on Friday morning, have that episode out, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on across the UFL, what's going on with the Stallions roster, what to expect in that game against Memphis. And certainly it should be a good episode. So make sure you tune into that. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed the big win on Saturday night. Giddy up.